It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Opening time for the Gao family's fast food stall on a busy street in Canton. The Gao family sell chicken. They make a great deal of money doing this. Each bagful sells for 3 yuan, about £1. But it costs Mr. Gao only 50 pence to produce it. On a good day, over the New Year's holiday for example, the family can make 1,000 yuan profit. That's £300, which is very good, because the maximum rate of income tax in China is only 2%. The entire operation, from the slaughtering of the chickens to the washing up, is conducted from the family's 3-room flat overlooking the back alleyway. Mr. Gao is allowed to employ 2 wage earners and an apprentice. 3 of his family help as well, and they all live together in the same 3 rooms. Gao named one of his cage birds Fat Choi, which means get rich. It must have worked. Every afternoon his suppliers arrive with over 100 chickens brought in by bus from the countryside. Here, in the sitting room, the bargaining will be done. Mr. Gao learned about chickens when he was sent to the countryside during the Cultural Revolution. Learn from the peasants was the slogan. And Mr. Gao certainly did. He was permitted to start up the venture because he was disabled. He claims to have had persistent backaches since he went to the countryside, and that got him a special permit. Gao is making so much money that he's thinking of diversifying out of chickens into pork. Spare ribs are also a popular luxury in Canton. The trouble is you're not allowed to keep pigs in a flat. But Mr. Gao is looking for a loophole in those regulations. It's hard to believe, but this is all part of the present regime's new plan for China, as Mr. Gao explains.
我们贷款的利息由于是扶持支持个体，所以利息是很低很低的，4厘2。那我利用了国家给我的贷款呢，就可以进多点货啊，扩大生产是吧？譬如开始没有贷款的时候，我只有几百块钱呢，可以卖一天可以卖20来个鸡。后来国家给了贷款以后了，我可以买多点货进来，那货运轮转的生意的兴旺起来了。
Gao is so successful that he's had to build a skyscraper chicken coop to keep up with demand. But he's only one of many street vendors in this city. The Cantonese are particularly fond of eating. Indeed, in Beijing, they say that a Cantonese will eat anything with wings except an aeroplane, and anything with 4 legs except a table. This is pangolin, a kind of anteater. It makes a good stew. Pangolin, like dog, is said to warm you up. Good in winter. Everything can be found here in the Qingping market. There are frogs, sea slugs, indeed, anything that swims is considered edible here. There are turtles, small, medium and large. Monkey brain soup is a speciality. Wild and domestic cats are available. Nowhere else on earth will you find this variety. The storeholders are selling for their own profit, like Mr. Gao, the chicken seller. The state sets maximum and minimum prices, but from then on people bargain. High prices will be paid for the rarer items. There are also snakes. This woman's been handling poisonous snakes for 26 years. They're often served at banquets where they can be cooked into a soup called dragon, tiger and phoenix. Dragon is the snake, tiger is cat, and the phoenix is usually chicken. The snake's gallbladder has to be removed because it's poisonous. But it isn't thrown away. It's sent down to the hospital and used as a medicine. In Canton, indeed all over southern China, you'll find stone jars containing such things as powdered seashells, abalone, and snake bones. There's chrysanthemum, jasmine, gardenia. There are melon skins, and even the excrement of silkworms. But this is not a grocer's shop, it's a hospital dispensary down the road. And it's stocked with an even wider variety of natural products than the market. What the Chinese don't eat for pleasure, they may well take as a medicine. Some of the prescriptions, like certain foods, are said to heat the body up, cure colds or rheumatism. Some of them will cool the body down, lower the blood pressure, reduce anxiety. Many of these medicines come from the hospital's own herb garden. Over the last 6,000 years, the Chinese have learned a great deal about cultivating food. The Chinese believe that everything you eat profoundly affects you, and so does the way you grow and harvest it. These are the fishermen of the River Li. They fish near the ancient city of Guilin, just 200 miles from modern Canton. A kerosene lamp is the only hint that this is the 20th century. The lamps are hung on the end of bamboo rafts. Trained cormorants will catch the fish as they swim towards the light. This was an art practiced on many rivers in China 1,000 years ago. Now it is rare. The cormorants have their necks tied with string. They'll be able to get in the water and catch the fish, but not swallow them. Each cormorant is trained to know the voice of its master. It will return to the right man on the right raft. Each bird can support a family, producing up to 20 pounds of fish in one night. But on the night we were there, the river was muddy and turbulent, and the birds produced only 2 or 3 pounds. There has been a fishing village here at Yangsuo since the start of recorded history. Many of the families still live on sampans, clustered together by the river bank. Their pattern of life has changed as little as their method of fishing. The preparation of the family meal here, as elsewhere in China, is the most important ritual of the day. At the heart of the meal is rice, usually boiled. The fish, which the birds have caught, is considered an extra. The staple diet is rice, as it has been for 200 generations. Everyone is expected to help in feeding the family. The daughter weaves nets when she's not at school. There are simple, unwritten rules to Chinese cooking. First, make sure that whatever you cook is fresh. Fish is often the freshest of all. The second rule is to use as little fuel as possible. Wood has long been scarce in China. There is usually no oven in a Chinese kitchen. Baking uses too much fuel. Stir frying is the answer. The iron wok is a classic Chinese invention. Its thin, curved sides distribute the heat far more evenly than a saucepan. Spring onions, ginger, and garlic are the favorite seasonings of China. They help to flavor the oil in which the fish is cooked. Another rule is to keep turning the wok, or the food, so it cooks evenly. They never leave food to cook by itself. Cooking is a performing art in China, and the performer should never leave the stage. The Chinese have depended on fish for protein since the late Stone Age. This pot was discovered at the Neolithic village of Banpo in central China. It is 6,000 years old. Fish was the staple food which allowed the first experiments with agriculture to be made 6,000 years ago. The art of fishing developed in many ways in China. Here, they make a pond and fill it with young fish. Around it, they plant mulberry bushes. Silkworms eat mulberry leaves, so there will be silk for the women to wear. Silkworm droppings make wonderful fish food. Fish fed on this will grow to a great size, especially carp, which thrive in muddy ponds. Fish farming has been practiced in China for at least 2,000 years. It is another of the many Chinese inventions that help man to eat. pond stocked, pregnant fish are thrown back. There's water everywhere in southern China. Without it, there'd be no rice. A few years ago, they tried to invent a machine to do the back-breaking job of rice planting. The machine failed. It destroyed the plants. In the 1950s, they tried another modern idea. They collectivized all the activity on the land. Educated people from the city told the peasants what to do and when. This also failed. It destroyed incentive and led to the worst famine in modern history. Now, traditional habits are being re-established. The state owns the land, but families are responsible for looking after it. This is called the new responsibility system. The Wu family weeds the rice with their feet. They know every inch of this ground. Their toes feel out every weed, every stranger. Taking so much care with the land, Chinese peasants are more like gardeners than farmers. The Wu family have lived here in Liu village for as long as anyone can remember. Growing, harvesting, and preparing food provide the rhythm of their life. Even in the busy farming season, Mr. Wu's second son takes 2 hours away from the fields to prepare a hot lunch for the family. Cooking and eating are considered in China to be just as important as cultivating or harvesting. The time spent cooking is not seen as wasted time. From the age of 4, the little boy will be expected to learn by watching and helping his uncle. Family life revolves around the kitchen. Women still do most of the cooking in rural China, but it's not unusual for the sons and grandsons to help. Feeding the family is an honorable occupation, a skill worth learning. Meat is a once-a-week affair here, but for many people it's only for high days and holidays. For some it's never. So this is a special day. There'll be stir-fried pork for lunch. They'll take special trouble with this. When there is no meat, there is tofu, a bean curd made from soybean. It's rich in protein. Rice, vegetables, and tofu make a balanced diet. The Wu family wouldn't normally eat more than 3 dishes for their main meal. The meat today is a special event. But the rice is usually plentiful and the beans are fresh. However, some families in China now demand a far higher standard of living than this. As light industry comes to the villages, incomes and expectations rise. When these girls go home in Canton province, they will enter a world of unaccustomed plenty, a world undreamed of by their grandparents. The Wong family own a 4-story house. Technically, they're still peasants. Though this is hardly a peasant's house, it has 4 floors, 6 bedrooms, and a separate kitchen block. Mr. Wong enjoys pointing out the secret of his success. He grows decorative bonsai trees for the Hong Kong export market. For every 8 hours he puts in at the brigade's communal gardens, he'll work another 8 on his private land. Like the chicken seller of Canton City, the Wong family are rich. They are the new consumers of China. They expect more than traditional peasants. As people become richer and tastes change, the traditional Chinese tea house has come into its own again. This is the 9 Dragon Spring near Canton. There's been a tea house here since 200 AD. Water from the well is much sought after for tea. The Canton Fine Arts Society meets at 9 Dragon Spring because the tea is so excellent. They discuss architecture, poetry, calligraphy. The tea house brings them together. All over southern China, and especially in Canton, the restaurants are flourishing again. This is the Banxi, a lakeside restaurant that offers meals at all prices. The Banxi is the modern version of the tea house that distinguished Chinese cities 1,000 years ago. These 2 men manage the Banxi. In 20 separate dining areas, they serve up to 10,000 customers a day. Most will demand standards unheard of in a public restaurant in Beijing. The manager's task is daunting. 9 different kitchens to supervise, over 1,000 different dim sum snacks on offer. Every morning the managers have a meeting to discuss and analyze the texture of a different cake or bun. Such quality control is necessary in Canton. When the meal becomes a banquet, no effort is spared. Menu writing is a full-time job for 5 calligraphers at this restaurant alone. Decorative roses are carved out of potatoes for banquets. They won't be eaten, they're just for show. This is an hors d'oeuvre, once prepared for the emperors. The classical tradition of banqueting in China is still very much alive.
这个够规模的艺术啊，这个艺术这是
龙凤群强。
我这盛情难却啊，一定接受了，干了啊，干了。是吗？对呀，啊，带点了吧？得了，我们配啊。对，
罚他，要罚他一杯。罚他一杯。
好。
誒，
有個好的
姜維啊，姜維帶兵咧就係帶一個好明嘅手套，就擺個快陣。
An enormous meal is about the most welcome present you can give someone in China. Up to 14 courses will be served, and as much drink as is necessary. These are all managers in the State Food Distribution Agency. As in the West, business lunches are part of the job. Far away from Canton, however, is another China, a grimmer China, where 14-course banquets are seldom heard of. This could be almost anywhere north of the Yangtze River basin, and it's like another country. The freewheeling plenty of Canton seems a long way away. This is a hot, dry place, a poor place. If the standard of living is to be raised to that of Canton, there's a lot to be done. There are parts of China which are very bleak indeed, uncultivated, almost empty. Much of northern and central China is very dry. Northern Henan province is notoriously so. Sometimes there's been drought in Henan 4 or 5 years in succession. These are most of the able-bodied people of Yaker Brigade. They're building a stone pond to collect and store water. They're building this pond by hand, in much the same way as these people were pictured building a dike 400 years ago. There are 1,400 men, women and children living in Yaker. They must build their own storage tank and connect it to a central reservoir without direct help from the province or the state. There is only one well in the whole village. One well for 1,400 people. That's not enough in the years of drought. So, a storage pond must be built. Construction by hand is still the way most things get done. It's the way the whole of ancient China was built. There was a time up here in Henan province when things were very different. 200 miles south of Yaker is a burial site nearly 1,000 years old. Between the neat rows of winter wheat stand ceremonial figures. This area was the cradle of Chinese civilization. Only 30 miles away was once the capital city of China, Luoyang. What went wrong up here? Why these ghosts from the past? There is a simple answer to that: prolonged drought and erosion. And with it went much of the prosperity of the region. This is a 2,000-year-old tomb, the underground grave of a local official. He was buried in a suite of rooms for his use in the afterlife. What's more, he was provided with a kitchen. On the kitchen walls are hundreds of pictures, which give an idea of the life enjoyed by officials here 2,000 years ago. When these pictures were shown to a couple of local cooks, they recognized every detail. Storage jars are still the same shape in China. They still pound the grain this way. They still hang meat to dry like this. Iron cooking pots on open fires have been around for almost 3,000 years. The cooks said they'd feel quite at home in such a kitchen. Indeed, the chopsticks and earthenware bowls available 3,000 years ago look the same as today's. So does the design of the houses in Henan and the courtyards. But times have changed. Prolonged droughts have forced the people of Henan to be frugal. Water is used sparingly. They still cultivate millet. This is millet gruel, a thin soup that's been part of the diet here for 5,000 years. But the staple diet of northern China is wheat. The Chinese eat a lot of grain. In the south, it's rice. Here, it's steamed wheat rolls or wheat noodles. Both are eaten in great quantities. This is the family of the local Muslim priest. There are quite a few Muslims in China. Because they're Muslim, they mustn't eat pork. But few of the villages in north and central China can afford pork, so this family isn't missing much. A Cantonese would find very little to tempt him on this table. Nothing would taste of much. It's very bland. The father is proud of what he can provide. It's certainly filling, like northern food the world over. But this is late summer, harvest time. This is the best food these people will see all year. Hernan's problem is water. The Yellow River runs through the province, and it's called the Sorrow of China. This is a tributary. The Yellow River itself is over a mile wide. The river is too shallow for navigation here and useless for fishing. It has the highest silt content of any river on Earth, and that jams up the irrigation pumps. What's more, the silt is raising the riverbed by almost 1 foot a year. In places, it's already 12 feet above the surrounding land. Only man-made dikes prevent disaster. Throughout the recorded history of China, there have been massive floods. In this century, hundreds of thousands of people have battled to build up the dikes, to stop the death and devastation, often in vain. According to historical records, one river, the Huai, just south of the Yellow River, flooded every 2 years for 70 generations. It's no wonder that floods are feared, and not only in the north. Here in Canton province, men dive to rescue their rice crop, inundated once again. These pictures were taken in 1948. Earlier in the 1940s, Henan was hit by persistent drought and famine, exacerbated by war. No one will ever know how many died, as the refugees streamed towards the cities in search of food. Memories of starvation are still alive for the Chinese. It's been the highest priority of the present regime to eradicate these memories, but the fear persists. "1,500 years ago, the rivers were a source of great superstition. Extraordinary measures were taken in an attempt to pacify the turbulent waters. In southern Sichuan province, at Leshan, the confluence of 3 rivers, was built the world's largest Buddha. Today, the Leshan Buddha is a tourist shrine, but legend says it was built for another purpose, to keep a watchful eye on the river. Tucked into the cliffs, the Buddha protected riverboats and was thought to ensure that these waters would stay calm. Elsewhere in Sichuan, a more practical solution had already been found. Before the time of Christ, the Qin administration had turned its attention to the problem of flooding and created the biggest civil engineering scheme the world had ever seen. The Chengdu River in Sichuan comes down from the mountains with ferocious speed. Here it used to flood. What could be done? A movable wooden barrier was built. This guided the logs and other debris down a side channel. That way the logs couldn't pile up and accidentally dam the river. Next, the water was allowed to lap over the banks in certain places, so the excess could be channeled away safely into irrigation canals. Dig the river channel deep and keep the embankments low. That was the engineer's motto, displayed by the river to this day. These ideas were the brainchild of Li Bing. This is a 1,500-year-old statue commemorating Li. It may be the oldest statue to a civil engineer in the world. Flood control in the service of the emperor was honorable work. The spade on this statue was used to measure the water and warn the engineers when the level was getting too high. Li Bing's great plan to control the river still serves the people of Sichuan, almost unchanged. He finally tamed the Chengdu River by splitting it up into smaller channels and allowing it to flow where he wanted it. Each field, each little village, was safe on its island. Li Bing's project is called Dujiangyang, the Chengdu River Dam. It's not nearly as famous as the Great Wall, but it ought to be. It's the oldest irrigation project on Earth, and one of the most magnificent. Du Jiangyang made Sichuan province the rice bowl of China. After 2,000 years of irrigation, the topsoil here is over 6 feet deep. To cut through soil like this, the Chinese invented the deep metal-edged plough that we all still use today. The earth of Sichuan is unusually fertile. It is carefully nurtured. 150 generations or more have ladled their night soil onto these fields. This care is what makes the largely vegetable diet of China so nourishing and delicious. 150 generations of patient gardening pays off. A 100 million people live in Sichuan, supported by an agricultural technology that is as old as the Chengdu River Dam, as old as this village, as old as these fields. Traditions die hard here. Every morning, Mr. Ho walks 2 miles to the tea house in the nearest town, as he's done for 50 years. He has seen great changes in his life. Landlords, officials have come and gone. But essentially, life in rural Sichuan follows a pattern laid down a long time ago. The tea house here is not a modern reconstruction where the Fine Arts Society meet. This is the real thing. When Mr. Ho arrives, he meets the same friends he always meets. He'll sit at the same bench like a regular in an English country pub. He pays 10 fen, roughly 3 pence, for a place on the bench, a cup, and 1 spoonful of jasmine tea leaves. You get as many refills of hot water as you like. Drinking tea in China, like drinking beer in England, is what brings men together. A few women visit the tea house, but they're usually the elder ones. They, like the men, come to listen to the storyteller.
药神报号以后，赶快就杀出重围，要到大云当中报于杨元帅知晓。但是药神此时多中饥，黄土铺内呢已经没有粮草了，老太君只能送了他一走马肉，也是道生不说的。
The story is always about the past, traditional China.
才赐给老太君很道明年，孩儿就此去，因此药神打，野马杀将出来。这药神头手谨慎，卖弄雄伟，犯人等也能敢当。瞧见药神神气十足，犯人一看可都稳喽。 这难嘛有杀将过来，我等抵挡不住。
The tea house is traditionally where the men of the community gather. What brings the whole family together is a banquet. While Mr. Ho sat in the tea house, his mother was arriving back at the family home. She'd been staying with her great-nephew 10 miles away in another village. She'd been away 2 months. An occasion like this, a safe return or a birthday, provides the opportunity to hold a banquet in celebration. But first, the tea. Then, all afternoon, 4 generations of the whole family sit down together and prepare the vegetables for the feast. On a special day like this, no effort will be spared. Earlier in the day, a pig had been killed for the banquet. Pigs are very valuable to the Chinese peasant. Fattening them up for market is a good investment and a source of ready cash. In Sichuan, however, pigs make an even greater contribution to the family economy. Their manure is stored in underground tanks near the kitchen. A tube leads up from the cesspit and over the dividing wall. Unlikely as it may seem, the pigs are helping to cook the banquet. This is all part of a new experiment in ecological living in making the villages self-sufficient. The family will cook the banquet and light the house tonight by methane derived from the pigs. At 6:30, the other relatives arrive for the feast. The cousins and nephews from down the road. A professional cook from the village has been brought in to help. There will be stir-fried chicken in a hot, sweet sauce. And there's another great favorite too. A savory pudding of steamed pork mixed with herbs and ground rice. The granddaughters will serve 8 dishes in all, plus a soup. There are green peppers with chili, tender bamboo shoots, and a dish of spicy bean curd. The cook's speciality is fish, a carp, cooked in rice wine with ginger and garlic. There's also plenty to drink. A potent spirit made from sorghum, as strong as whiskey, drunk from porcelain cups. At 7 o'clock, the eating begins in real earnest. The whole banquet was arranged in honor of this old lady, but in effect it's a symbol of family prosperity and togetherness. These are the good times in Sichuan. There isn't a civil war going on, the Cultural Revolution is over. While the good times are here, great-grandmother's return is reason enough for a banquet. Eating in China is a symbol that people are united, that all is well. They grow the food together, so now they'll eat together from the same dish, and they'll drink together. When they settle down to celebrate in Sichuan, they leave no cup unturned. But will the good times last in China's countryside? The population drifts ever upward. Birth control measures may work in Chinese cities, but the peasants still want many children. The rest of the world can learn much from the careful husbandry of the Chinese peasant and from the frugal habit of making do with less. But how long can China's ancient agricultural ways sustain its growing population? What will happen if the floods come? What will happen if the Chinese peasant goes hungry again?